welcome back to the Jansen Art Studio. Welcome to our continuing Dutch study of Jan van Huysen and the Mignon and Dehiem techniques. When we last left this in the last lesson, we were down here right into these blue grapes. Now, it's been a month, hair's a little longer, and I wanted to show you. I haven't done anything to this palette in a month, and it is absolutely, since we put it out the last time, and it is absolutely awesome. All the colors are just wonderful. I haven't even missed it, stirred it, or anything. And that's the beauty of the global palette when you're using the global colors and prepared like that. And, sometimes I just take that lid and I'll mist that lid a little bit and shut it down. And it's been sitting over there in the corner of my studio next to my easel there with the Dutch piece for over a month now, and the colors are absolutely perfect. So I walked in this morning to start the filming there, cracked the top of it, and realized I don't have to do anything to this palette. So, it is our room, of course, is our studio here is temperature managed and everything, and it all depends, on where you store your palette. Just, you may have to, stir it up every couple weeks or so. But here, when I maintain it like that, I haven't touched it for a month, and it's absolutely wonderful. So it's really nice to be able to do these long-term studies like that and use the colors like that. I just reached over, grabbed the top, and we can continue painting even though it's been a month. Okay, let's come back down in here. Now, a lot of times, like I've told you in so many of the videos, I like to work on the surfaces that when they're relatively dry. I'm going to this time also show you and let you work on a little bit of the surface when they're wet. Now, what they would do, of course, they use the oils, and they would put a very, very thin coat of oil over the top, and they would do a lot of the glazing of the colors on top of this. So I'm going to put a very thin coat, very, very thin coat of extender over this, and you'll see how it will kind of wake up the colors a little bit, wake up some of the things that we've been doing. When we get further on into the painting here, we will be doing a little bit of this, some glazing of some colors back on and smoothing of some of the stuff out. But they get a lot of interest, especially in the grapes, by doing that scumbling technique. So we want that to dry up a little. So we don't, well, if you do this, you don't want to put too much down onto the surface. So you see, you get this lovely, there's just a little bit of it there on the surface. Now I'm going to work into the grapes here. I'll work up this way through the Pooty, up through the primroses, down this way. And then hopefully if we have some time on this lesson, down into the table a little bit. I don't know, there's a lot of little primroses up there. But I want to get down into this whole area. I want to work in this whole bottom area, getting that pretty much complete as we head on, then we'll head on up, okay? So let's continue on. You can use any of your small brushes. I was using a small little filbert, and we'll just come over here, and let me just pull my palette right up here so we can see the colors. I'll just put it right up through here again, right up like this, and we'll grab down some of our blues. I love that ultramarine blue. That's one of their favorite. And we were working with the blue, blacks, and grays, and especially as we get back here into the back, they're really, really dark back here. But we, and you don't see that too much, but we can't leave them black. See, we have the blue ones here. We can't leave those just black like that. We want to cast them kind of blue. So we're going to take some ultramarine blue and some of our black here, and we're just going to lightly glaze over these. Most of these will stay very dark, and we'll be a little careful with this. Some of these real dark ones will play up against this real light area right in here. And, they'll come forward just because of the contrast here. So we'll put some of this on here. And when you're doing this, you notice I'm just working a very thin layer here. And I'm just using the color. I'm trying to keep it thin. And you don't see too much blue in it because it is so dark, but it's a real, real dark blue. That's what we want to have, because these are the blue grapes. And the Dutch painted a lot of blue grapes, green grapes, the Spanish type grapes that have the different coloring on it. That was the true sign of a master, is painting all of the grapes there and the varieties of the grapes. So we'll put some of this on, especially as it comes up in here. As it gets up into this area, and some of these that I have here are a little bit bluer than what I want. So I mean, and I will be adjusting that. There's some of the colors that I will come back and adjust a little bit later, but we'll put some of this on and shape up some of these grapes here. I know it's very hard for you to see. I can see it, you know, here, but it's very hard for you on the cameras and stuff to, even though they're very high quality HD, very expensive HD cameras we use in here, they don't always pick up everything, but they might pick up a little bit of that. I'm going to cast it just a bit more to that ultramarine blue right in here, so that as I'm switching my colors. Now this grape that's right back here, he has it as a green grape, but right back in here they're going to take back up over into the blue again. So I want to show this a little bit more blue, and we might put a little bit of light into that. It's you know, he has it where the light is hitting, you know, the light is hitting right through here and then dying off immediately. Well, that's what happens, you know, in the light. But we'll be doing some of that with a glazing on a shadow here a little bit later. But I might want to shift this other one over here. Let's just pick up a little Hansa and go right into here, and let's just shift this one over here a little bit more to the green side, and we'll pick up just a touch of white and just lightly glaze over that one. As you're working through some of these, and this is you'll see some of the grapes you might have missed here and there. Let's just add another one in here to help round that light back, and that's good because that picks up that light, and then that goes away right into that right back there, so we pick up a little bit. But I still have to go through and work these grapes again, and you know, put a little bit more work into them, and I'm going to be doing that. Once I get all of my coloring on everything, then I go into refining, and that's where I'll spend the majority of the time on the painting, is the absolute refining and the thin layers of washes and stuff. That takes almost as long as it does to build up to that point. And it's really fun to do when you get to that point. You just work on a little bit at a time. It's fun because you're adding the final life to the painting. Now I'm going to just take a tiny bit of white into this. I want to keep this to a gray, kind of a blue-gray color here, not too light here, so just a little bit. And we want to cast a little bit of light onto this one here, and just a bit of light like right into here. Some of this, you know, will show by when we glaze on our shadows, so we can have just a touch of light. These will all sit way back into the back, but they can have a touch of light in there as they go through. And his do, and we'll have some back here that have a little bit of a reflected light or so hitting some of them back through here. Then we'll switch back over to our blue and just glaze on a little bit of the blue color, maybe a bit of that blue, a bit light there, blue-gray here, onto some of that. The blues in between, so you see you get that working of that color through there. You want that to diminish back through. That's where you want to concentrate on, that diminishing back through there. This is actually a leaf back in here, so we'll stop this grape right about in here. Have a little grape right in there. A little bit more of the dark in there. And then this goes up this other side here as well. Ultramarine blue, you can have a little phthalo blue in there. That became, like I said before, you know, Prussian blue became Van Hyacen's favorite blue later on in his painting career. But not quite at this time. He was an ultramarine blue painter, and later a Prussian blue painter. As it came in, Prussian blue and his favorite yellows became into the Naples yellow stuff, which... So we'll put a little bit on there, and then we'll gray that up just a bit. Let that just fade. I love these fusions. I use just a real soft. I'm using the color really dry, very thin but very dry. So I'm dragging over the surface just a bit. Just tap into some of that one there. There we go. So we got some nice movement of our blues, you know, back into this whole area. Just stays just so dark. You know, we just want to have a little bit of coloring into there to give a little bit of interest, but you know, it doesn't get very much. It's, you know, you want to keep that interest right up in here along that crescent shape of light that we've worked on. So that's where you want to keep that. But we will put a little diminishing light back. That's what you look for. You look at the lightest ones right up here and then just diminish their light back. And so you can also apply that here to, like, here's the light that's hitting onto this one, so the next one's back here a little darker as it goes back. And you want nice, clean, nice, really, really clean, without building texture. Nice, really clean lines here. Remember, we still avoid the texture in all the painting. It's easy when you're painting like this to get texture, but, you know, use your colors thin. Well, I'm using them kind of dry, kind of thin, and you want to avoid the texture so that we can come in and change something if we need to, and reshape something. And that's what they did. Okay, so that gets some of those nice blues in there. And we'll just be careful with our hands here as we're working into some of those areas. But diminishing down, and I love that ultramarine blue, even with a tiny touch of Thalone black into that. I love that nice deep blue. I know it's hard for you to see, but boy, you can pick it up here ever so, because it's a nice deep blue. You can pick it up in and on these graves. Nice dark, deep tone here. You can just pick that up, man. Get a little more ultramarine here. It's just a nice deep hue and nice bright but dark and rich color, and so that just really gives life to everything here up into the front of these as well. Okay, so we'll look at that, and he'll have, you know, over onto the other side, over onto the foot over there, and it's hard to see in the photos and stuff, but there's a couple of them that are going to poke in over there on the other side, and we'll get some of that real detail a little bit later, but there is a couple of them over there. And, you know, when I paint something like this, and this is what you should do too, when I paint something like this, my eyes focus on the overall light to dark of the painting as I'm working the grisaille. And then my eyes start to shift to a little bit of the detail. Then I go to the coloring, and then I'm going to go to final detail, and that's when we start looking at the little intricacies of the design. The little bugs and wings and all the little water drops and all that stuff that we got to add. And that's when you might notice a few more little things in there. So early on in the design, I don't get wrapped up in the details like I've been telling you. Don't do that. Don't get wrapped up into the details, because we do this just like, you know, like all good artists do. They don't get so wrapped up in the details. They start the overall look of the composition, and then they refine. Okay, so there's going to be a little bit more going on back up into here, and you know, and we'll get there. I just want to make sure I got some nice clean light lines through here, and you know, as we go out to this area here, so without getting texture, just make sure you got a nice dark back here, your grapes nice and round and all that kind of stuff. But you know, to get all the little things, and there's going to be a couple little grapes right over there, to get those all in there right now, that's a little bit too much. Okay, let's head on up this way, up here towards our, you know, up into the area of our putti here, and we'll just come across here. Well, let's just put a little bit more of that extender right on there, so you can, if you like the feeling of that, that does help keep your color sliding and stuff if you're working with the tints. But it doesn't work so well on those peaches where we like to use that granulated type of that look on there. I'm just going to put a little extender in my brush here and get some of the blue out of here just a bit. Even though there will be, you could use some of that blue and to help cool off some of these shadowy areas under here. Now, we did do a light tinting here with the, you know, into the putti here. We did do a light tinting with some of the quinacridone into there. And I'm going to just run through that real quick with a little bit of quinacridone. And I'm just going to, that little bit of blue in that, my brush will help just tone that down just a bit here, which is what I want to do. And his, he's painted all kinds of, later on in his paintings, he paints these real bright terracotta, vases. And this one it isn't quite so bright. It's almost on the kind of greenish side here. But we do start with this nice, almost terracotta color, which comes perfectly from the quinacridone color. And it's tinting colors. And it comes over. And that greenish color that he has to this, is really the kind of yellowish kind of glazes going over the gray grisaille. So we'll have some of that. Then we'll take a little of our Indian yellow, and we'll tint through some of the light areas here. That's going to be through here, which is going to be this forward part right in through here. Right in through here. Now we're going to be pushing this back, but this will give us some nice coloring to work into, that we can start some of the shape. Now we got to watch, that we don't get too light on here. I'm going to take some white down here, and we're going to keep this kind of grisaille also to this. So maybe a little bit of the black here and the white here. Okay. Almost this kind of grisaille, grayish kind of look to this here. A little grisaille, a little yellow there. And, a yellow oxide color is a very nice one, because they use the oxides to have into that too. Those two together make beautiful types of grisailles that will work over, value-wise, that will work over. So here's your darker, and then you can head right over here towards your yellows here, and then right into towards your lights up over here, and that makes a beautiful, all of that makes beautiful terracotta painting colors in there, and that's basically what he's done. So I'm going to tap in a little bit of the light here and shoot for a little roundness right there, and you can see how that comes really easy. He has a little bit of roundness on the point of his shoulder there, and down through the arm here. I'll tap into just a little bit of the dark and just shadow both sides of that, so the light stays into the center part of his arm, and it gets a little darker here as it goes in towards this rose, this turned back rose. Okay, and so he's building all of the muscle groups of the little pooty here. A little light, and then we'll touch right over here towards the shadow. Shadow that down, almost down to 1 here. Shadowing that down here. But you can see that starts to make a beautiful look to the terracotta. And so it's and I brush mix it always in through here. Sometimes a little bit more of the Indian yellow, sometimes a little bit of the quinacridone down here. And that just gives good color variation, which you would naturally have in the terracotta vases. And I've painted a lot of his terracotta vases, especially with the pooty on them, some very big ones. So this is the actual back. So the pooty lifts off of the terracotta here, and but we've got to have a little bit of light right in through here. Now I'm just going to lightly tap into a little dark, and we'll just work that in here. A little bit like that, a little bit back in here. We'll work a little bit more dark just to tone that down. The actual pooty though here, so this will stay a little soft right there, and then the pooty here, he actually lifts off with the shadow on him right here, more so than on that edge. And that's what it would be, because he's carved relief on it, so you wouldn't put the shadow down into here as much as him. So we'll just soften that out just a bit. A little bit of light in there and that, but you see him lifting off through a shadow more than anything else. He's got his shadowing right back in here, a little roundness. We'll just tap into a little black. Not using black by itself. I have a little quinacridone into it. I want to get that real cold, super cold in there. This is the edge of his hair. Right in there, and his little face. We'll put a little bit of that dark right along the edge of his face there. So as I'm painting here, again, I'm not going to, get too wrapped up into everything perfect, but we're just shifting his color over and making sure that we're putting on some of our shadowing and things on here. Now, I have the quinacridone here. I could even take a little bit of the raw sienna down over here too, which is beautiful, into that, almost like that Realgar color that they use, that he used a lot, that the Dutch used a lot. So we'll tap into some of this, and I just want to work this a little bit lighter. I don't want to get it as light as those grapes there, definitely. But we do want to have some of that light-dark variation there, because we'll be glazing this part back. So it's actually going to be painted right now a little lighter than what it is going to end up being. Let's work a little bit of that light right back through here. Just let that diminish down like that. Just pull it like that, let it diminish down. Tap a little dark into that, and just work this back up like that. And so when you have that grisaille underneath there, see, it doesn't take very much to keep that grisaille working. So we'll make sure we emphasize that shadow crease that's in his back there. We'll just start right here like that. Pull that down, let that fade away. Let this muscle group build here. Comes down, whoop, that's a bit light. Down like that. And again, don't get wrapped up too long into this. It's easy, to get wrapped up into it, but we just want to get some of the variation in. We'll come in with the detailing and really paint in here really nice. And we'll work some of that out. And we'll head right on up to the shadow here. We do want to take just a bit of edge of the black this time. Black with a little quinacridone in it will define his hand just a bit more. Not going to paint it specific, but we can put a little more definition in that. And his hand lifts off the body through the shadow, more of the cast type shadow there than anything else. And we'll make sure we get that shadowing there on his head, his hair there. Put a little bit of that light modeled into his hair. That little bit of that shadow coming to help his arm, separate his head from his arm there. See a little bit of that. I'm going to cast just a little more light right up in here. Get a little gray color into that. Just lightly with the brush. See, I'm just dragging the brush surface ever so lightly here. And I love it to grab. It'll grab. And if it's not grabbing and sliding too much, your color's too wet. You want it to just grab a little bit and stick. That's the type of paint. That's the type of painting techniques they use. Very thin, but it grabs. Get some light going into his hair there, like that. Light going right here. There's going to be a little bit of light from that edge there, and a little bit of shadow for the roundness. That quinacridone in black is just real pretty as a shadow on that. There, like that. Get some more of that out. If it starts to get too dry in here, just tap into a little extender and edit here, but don't get your colors too wet. Let's work some shadow back up in here. Back like that, and that will help lift that part of him off there. We'll work a little of that terracotta-y color there. A little bit here on the bottom of the putti as he's here. Keep it off that grape. Matter of fact, it's easy. Just take a little bit of water and you can clean it right back up off that grape there that I hit. So we keep that nice and clean. There. We'll put right into this area just a bit of the light. Just brush that out just a bit. Just leave a little bit of that movement going on in there. And we'll come up here onto the face here. Let's just take a little more light. Let's get a little more of our quinacridone, a little bit of our yellows, a little bit of our Realgar or the raw sienna here. Okay. And we'll just find a nice little lighter color right up over here. And again, watch it in through here. All these values that you're working with should not be as light as here or as light as here. They should be right down in between here. And sometimes you have to just kind of touch it to see. So I want to lighten up his forehead there just a bit. Okay. And we'll set that back in a second. His real light area is going to be onto his chin, down in this area, but still that's going to be, so we're going to put a little chin and cheek on him here. Extra little chin here. And we'll put in a little dark there down into his eye socket area. A little bit under his nose. There. We'll shadow some of this back as it goes back up here towards the primrose, that turned primrose. And so we'll shadow that forehead back just a bit here. And when we get into the real detail, this is when we'll come in and paint him up better, give him a little bit more of a highlight and stuff right up into here onto his cheek and stuff. I won't worry too much about that right now. We'll just put a little bit on so we can see his facial features, but we're not going to get, again, don't get wrapped up into the details of everything. You'll be there all day. You don't want to do that. Just so you see him a little bit more here. And he has his clothing here that we can come back in and love that quinacridone in the black. Run that through. Actually hit a little blue there by mistake. That's not good. I'll lift that right back off. A little water will help. Just take that and lift that right back off there. I don't want that blue in there. That's a little too cool right yet. I mean, we're going to have it. But that was a little too blue. It's nice to have that blue to tone that quinacridone, but that was a little too much. So we'll push some of that in. We'll come up here and grab a little bit of that black. Work that right in. And that'll pull the shadow down here, which is the folds in his clothing there. Soften that into his arm. There. They're chubby little guys, so they have all of this, you know, rounding parts of their flesh here. Nice chubby little flesh. Chubby, chubby. And as we get up into here, just like we did last time, we'll just kind of suggest some of it. We're not going to paint it too much. Suggest like the, well, that's a bit light. Suggest the, just knock that down. A little quinacridone and black, maybe a touch of yellow. Let's get down a little bit more. That quinacridone and black is just a lovely glazing color on this. And just set it down in place there. Like I said, we don't get too wrapped up into the shapes here too much. And we'll want to, you know, paint his little fingers and stuff. And again, that's detail. We're not there yet. but you can put a little bit in, a little bit of an idea. Here. A little bit for his clothing. Pulling down there. I have to shadow this face just a touch more. Whoop, that's not good. I wiped out his nose. There we go. Just idea here. A little bit on his body. A little bit of this light streaking down through his clothes here, just to get that feeling of the folds. Just some feeling of the folds here. Put on a little light and we'll just shadow it back just a bit. There we go. But so watch it. So the lightest area is going to be right in through here and then right back up through there. Now this, I could have a little bit more of that quinacridone kind of like showing up in here, which is that nice terracotta kind of color. Right up into that nice dark shadowing right onto his hair, which is in that dark shadowing. There. Go. And there'll be more stuff going right up over in here onto this part of the vase with the acanthus here. So you see we're shifting that color over, doing a little bit of work. We've got a lot more work to do on that as we get into the details of it, but it starts to take on a little bit more interest. Let's keep going right here with that. We have our quinacridone and our black. So that, and our Indian yellow right up here. And quinacridone, Indian yellow right in here. Just very light glazing of this. And you can see how that, just real light glazing of it here, picks up with the grisaille and leaves that nice light dark shadowing of the grisaille, and we'll pick up and give it that terracotta kind of color to the vase here, the vase, the expensive vase here like that. We'll come back. Let's pick up some of that quinacridone and black, and so, and nice shadowing color. And let's just work that through right up in here, which shadows a little putty. We'll let that just kind of have lots of movement back through here as it will pick up the acanthus and stuff as well. Back in there. We'll take that nice quinacridone and dark. That's the shadowing color for, you can straighten the lines up here a little bit. Straighten up your shadow lines that we added earlier to your container. Don't get them too well defined, because again, that would paint it more than some of the other areas, and we don't want to do that. And I'll add a real soft little light, a low light right down in there. It's not very light, but you'll pick up a little bit of it. Out onto the edges, like he gets right back over in here, he's going to have some nice light color into the onto the handle and stuff like that. That's going to show up because the highlight's going to be here to the back side, and so we have a nice shadow to the inside. So I'm going to take some of my quinacridone here and some of my dark like this, and we'll run that nice shadow again, nice clean line, because it's going to play against the light that's back there. So it's a pretty clean line. It will be a little fuzzy towards the end of the painting. We'll fuzz it just a bit, but we'll just go ahead and leave that right now. Quinacridone in dark, right there like that, and then just come right around like that. It's a beautiful shadow. We'll soften that right into where that light is area, right in there. It'll pick up right up against the edges of the acanthus, and acanthus is going to be the edges of acanthus when you paint acanthus, and I've spent my whole life studying acanthus and painting. The edges of this called the shredding of the leaves, the acanthus leaves here. We won't do all of that yet. You know, that, like I said, we'll just give it a nice look in there, and we might put a little bit of this nice shadowing just with the chisel of your brush here, like that, just to give a looking of the movement of the leaves here, which is actually the vein lines of the acanthus coming around like that. You know, each time we paint, we add a little bit more, so adding just a bit more of the detailing there. We'll come around with our shadow. We have that nice turning knob here that's on the edge of the handle. We'll make sure we express that. A little bit of nice clean shadow underneath here. We'll express that on it. Nice shadowing on the knob here around, and it gets more of the acanthus knob, which makes that it's not completely smooth like up onto that one there. So you can have a knob that's really round in acanthus. You can have a knob that's shredded that will turn with a lot of things. It's almost like a leaf or vein turning there. And we'll put a few of these turns out like that. Now, we're going to go grab some of our oxide color here, yellow oxide, right into this. Let's add just the tiniest bit of white into this. The tiniest bit of white here. The oxides, and maybe a little bit of that black and that quinacridone here, so we don't get this too light too quick here. And this will be the light color from the light side, and we'll pull it in. We'll drop a little light down the back side here, which we'll refine again later, but we'll drop a little light along the back side here, and it's pull it in like that, and then pull it into the leaves a little bit. That'll be the light coming back. Take that off of that just a bit there. And so what I'm really doing is, you know, refining the look of the light dark. Where's the look of the light dark into the acanthus in here? And, you know, we'll come back in even more after we've done the light dark, and, you know, this will even get areas of shine, just like the peach would and so forth. And, you know, like I said, we still have more work to do on the peach and all those fruit and stuff, and this will get that same type of attention. A little bit darker down over here, you can define the edges of the acanthus just a bit and work that, just so they get the feeling of that bending around the handle there. There we go. Let's make a little model-y light. What I mean by model is that this is a rough turn knob, not a smooth one that's right up here. So we want to keep it kind of, the color's not super smooth or blended. You want to leave it kind of rough, like this, short, choppy little turns going around, and that just makes it look like it's more viney or tendril look to it. There, like that. Get a little of our yellow, raw sienna, the Realgar color, and some quinacridone and black, and just get a little more coloring there, and just a tiny bit of the light. Here, turning around into that. There we go. Still has lots of stuff to do, but it's coming. It's getting its coloring in and a little more definition to the light shadowing, to the shadowing stuff. We'll take a little bit of this, our lower lights there with the sienna, and then we'll add just a bit of the light here. And I want to, again, we don't want to do this smooth, so you want to use your brush kind of choppy because this is a acanthus bull, so it's got a lot of interest to it. It's not like super smooth. These knobs here can be a little, oh, that's a bit light. Hit some white there by mistake. A little bit of that quinacridone and black into that oxide. This works so well. We'll just put that, that's that light area that's going to come through there. That's where the light is on that. We'll have some light right in here. And again, so, you know, we'll set up the lights, and the lights can be just a little lighter than what you actually see in the painting because we'll be glazing shadow into all this area here. So they have to be actually a little lighter so that you can glaze it with shadow down. So we'll get just a bit of that. I love this little 2. It just does these short, choppy little strokes, which kind of feathers up that acanthus quite nice. And we'll give just an idea of the turns here for the vase. Little idea of the edge of lights. There we go. We don't want that to be too smooth, so I'm just going to choppy that just a bit. You can always smooth something really easy with just some glazes afterwards, okay? So, you know, but once you lose that interest, it's hard to get that in there. So I always like to kind of paint with like a lot of interest. Just like I was saying, like on the roses and stuff. We're going to come back and smooth those out. I leave them choppy so that, you know, I can definitely come back in and do that. You know, work them again. Just going to give him, I just have to give him a little more work on his nose there. So I see his face a little bit more. Get that chin up there. We'll give him just an indication of a mouth there. Doesn't look like he's happy there, so we'll just, there we go. Push. And I just kind of push back and forth with the lights when I do that. His face got a little thin on one side here, so I'm just going to widen that out just a bit onto this side. They're chubby little guys. Like I said, I've painted them before, quite a few of them. But so that sets that in there on that side. So that looks, that's pretty good. So see, it just tints that over, and that'll allow us to work, you know, in the more lights and darks and stuff like this later on, especially get into the glazes. See, what'll happen here is we'll take a real cool glaze later on. Like here's a little bit of black, okay? And we'll take a little bit of our ultramarine blue into that, and then a little bit of our red violet, which they would use like the lake colors there. Make a real cool, keep it more on the blue blacks, but we need a little bit of that red violet. Your red violet's your coolest of all the colors in there. It's a nice cool glazing color, and I'll just show you this just a bit. Is that'll come in here as a real cool dark shadowy glaze, and see how that pushes all of this stuff. That's going to push all of the stuff there into the back, and it will really as we apply this over here, it'll really kind of shove them down. But just like with the grisaille, we'll preserve our highs and lows to our painting. So it is a beautiful glazing color. And that right now, for the shadows, we're just using our quinacridones and our blacks. So we're not, so what it actually is creating a shadow, but the shadow's slightly warm because the quinacridone's warming that black slightly. And then we'll get even more definition here as we paint our temperature into the painting here. This will all cool down and you get those shadows. And that's what you want to do. You know, it's, you know, everything is really kind of, the coloring and stuff into the painting is really kind of warm. And that's why we put these glazes over to warm up the grisaille. And then we'll come back and cool certain areas of it. So they do a lot of temperature painting in here, a lot of it. Now let's come back in and let's start working on some of the primrose here. And they're going to have this yellowy kind of centers here. We'll take some of our light color here, our white, and we'll take some of our oxide color here, our yellow oxide color, favorite painting color, them along the, and you know, like I said, you can get towards that orpiment type of color here. You can put a little bit of the Indian yellow into that and head over towards that. But we're going to, again, this is going to keep some of this onto the cool side, you know, as we work this. Let's put just a tiny bit of extender on it. And you can decide, you know, it's, if you like to work with these extender like this on this, it's just great. But like I say, just a tiny, tiny bit, just enough to say you just lightly went over the surface, because you don't want this at all to be soupy at all, okay? You want to get that interest of it kind of dragging and sticking. We're going to take some variations here of this light and this yellow here, just some variations. I might even just tone this down with a little bit of that quinacridone in black. Just makes this lovely gray color. See that right there? And if I add any of my oxides to that right to there, you get this lovely kind of cloudy yellow and a soft yellow that looks, it's just perfect for what he has in that area for the centers on these primroses here. So we're just going to tap some of that around here. And again, it's like we'll use this very thin, and it's just taking that gray grisaille from the primroses themselves, and we were doing and adding the coloring to it now. From the gray, we're adding the color. So there's one turned back right in there. So there'll be another one turned back, another one turned back here, right in here. Yeah, a lot of little stuff going on. Let's get back up into here. I got a little bead or edge of color there, and that's what you try to avoid. You want to keep this very flat here. So just tint these little centers like that. Working those colors here, and we'll add a tiny bit of light to that. Let's just add a tiny light to that. So we'll create a little bit of a light value, just a little bit of it in the brush. Tap some of that off. And let's come in and just tap in a little bit up in like in here, the light area, the light side of that one there. Okay, so we'll just tap in a little bit of that light side there, like that. Okay, maybe a little bit there. It's kind of working around that one just a bit there. And a little tiny bit. Here, maybe a little bit. Some of it will be in towards the center on these, right around that center button. Get too much, just tap it off like I did there. Okay, so you just want to see on some of these backs just enough to just break the color a little. Just to break the color so it's not all the same. That's where you get that variation, you know. It's just, we'll get a little bit around there. Just little touches of it there. Now let's come in with a little bit of our quinacridone and black onto the brush. Quinacridone and black, that nice, kind of a warm shadowy color. Put that on. Let's come in and reset the centers of those. Just tap in a little bit more to the center. Sits right there. And again, you notice I'm painting pretty quickly here, because I'm tinting more. I'm looking for just the coloring more than anything else. I'm not getting into the exact details of everything. I'm working towards that. So you can see now that these, as you're looking through these primroses that are here, see they get a little bit more color, a little bit more interest. You can take, it's a little quick to do this, but you know, you can take a little bit of color onto your edge there and just tap some of that into the center of the primrose if you want. That's detail that it, you know, I really try to avoid, but sometimes it's kind of nice to see that to you. You see a little bit of that in there. You know, that's what we're going to be doing. But don't spend a whole lot of time in there, because if you get too much detailing in it right there, you're painting out of perspective, and we don't want to do that yet. Okay? So now set it there. Now, there's a variety to these of the reds, but it's all in shadow. Reds and oranges and stuff here. So, you know, but they're really kind of in shadow right now. I'm just going to take a little bit of some water on my palette here and remove back this so I can go right in this red area right there. And keep that under camera for you. So let's go in and let's go grab some. We're going to head over towards those red and oranges here, which means I'll grab the Naphthol red light. We'll grab some of our yellow oxide here. Even the raw sienna works great. But see how it makes a nice toned orange. And of course we have this shadowing color, which is our black and the quinacridone, which works beautiful. You could have a little bit of red violet in there and stuff. It's a little soon, but it makes a nice shadowing color here for that orangey color here. So here's our orange. We'll keep that kind of toned. We'll have this big guy that's right up here. This is more of the orange one here, so we'll put some of this orange right into him here. Right up into there. That's the one that you see a lot of orange on. So we'll add some of that right now. Right in there, a little orange. We'll let it go a little bit of a toned red, deeper, darker toned red here as it gets in towards those yellows there. That'll just model that up a bit there, like that. Some of that nice toned red. We can even have just the tiniest bit of red violet or a little bit of the brown madder there to help vary the color. We're going to make some darker reds right over here. And again, I'm working very thin, just very thin little color here. Let's put a little bit of the reds over some of these others right in here. Maybe a little bit on that orange there. Okay. Reds and violety kind of colors. Let's get a little, some of these stay very dark towards the black, but just a little reddish tone into it. You can drag some of that right up over that center there and push it back just a bit. But little bits, like maybe there's a little bit of a brighter little red showing up right here before it goes right into shadow again. Maybe a bit of that orange right over there. Just a nice variation. Bit of coloring. And then I'll just pick up that nice shadowing and set some of that back and tap through that a bit. And just, if you let that color just model like that. Let me come in just a little bit closer. And so I'll let that color just model like that. See, I'm just going to work my palette here very small. Get that dark in here. Some of those dark touches, maybe a little bit of a red touch onto it. And then let's get into a little bit more of a shadowy touch. Right around there. Sometimes you can put a little orange touch there. And this all works wonderful up there with that grisaille. So go ahead right up here. We'll add maybe a little bit more red. You can have a little bit of that red violet, a little bit of that brown madder, right up into that black. It's real dark ones that might be back up in here. Then just break up that color. Maybe hits a little bit of light, a little orangey color right in there. And just lightly with that fusion, just drag into that center a little. If you drag too much like that, just dragged almost a little too much, I'll just step the center out here with a little bit of that yellow. There we go, like that. These on his are going to become a little more orange. Right up in here, right in this area, we'll get a little bit more orange again. Coming right to the front. Push some back. Little touches of red in there though to break up the orange. Right in there. That's good. Isn't that pretty to get this nice variation? Of course, we're going to glaze a lot of it down, but that's what we're looking for. So we'll take a little bit of our cooler reds here. And don't get rid of all the gray. Now you can just leave a little bit of the reds as a little coloring to this. Here, drag into the center a bit. And then let some of that gray pick up too. And that's what they'll do, is especially as you're heading in some of these shadows. Some of those grays are fine to sit there and see. You'll pick up just a tiny hint of red violet-y kind of color in there. To the shapes of those. You know, we'll get a little more edges and shape to those when we get to that part of the painting. Maybe we'll just get a little of that dark idea of that one. There should be one right in there. Just give an idea of that right in there. Just push a little light. That's what's really going to give you the idea and the impression of it is, you know, having the red going right to that little center. This little center coming around this little primrose is what really makes it. Here. And they all painted a lot of these. Little primrose like that. Add some of those reds back through here, a little darker. But it's still kind of casting to the red side. A little graphite line there I wanted to get rid of. Just kind of cast that to the side there. Little light colors from the leaves and stuff are going to go through there. So now you see these beautiful, they starts to pick up, you know, some of that tone, and we will be refining that, and you can come in here when we'll change, you know, some of this will change up. We'll get a little brighter with some of the reds, you know, as we might use a little Hansa with, you know, the Naphtha red to create, you know, some final oranges later on. We'll look at how this dries down and then judge it and stuff. But I'm just going to create a little bit more orangey color right in here on this one. It just gives them. And, you know, like I say, this is an area that we're going to be glazing down. So this will just give a nice dose of color right in here that we can glaze down. Here. There we go. Just put a little bit of the red into cooler side into that. Touches. Like that. And a little bit down in here, we'll add some, a little bit down in here. And that tiniest little casting of that red here will help separate that primrose from that putty down there. That little guy. Get that center. Like that, that'll be good. And again, don't worry about all the little specifics. We're still not into that yet. You know, like we'll be shaping up these petals a little bit more and stuff. You know, we'll do all that. We'll get there. We'll do all that. might want to come in and do a little bit of tinting back into this area of the painting, and especially, and let's go over and let's, matter of fact, since we got some of that lovely orange and stuff going in here, we'll, and I've got to get this down a little bit more gray right down in here as well. We'll come over and work on this area right over here before we head back down. We'll step up and we'll work a little bit of this area right up and through here. And so we might even want to tint that big leaf here too, which is wonderful because, you know, on this leaf, when you look at this tulip leaf here, you can see in his original here, and just like you can see in those other leaves that are down over here by the roses on this side down over here. But you can see that real yellowish other area, and then the blues that are down under, you know, sitting over here, and how the area in here had, you know, fugitated some of the colors. And so let's do a little bit of that area. I'm just going to step up in size of brush here, and just trying to find it where I put it. Just step up in size of brush here a bit here, just a little bit bigger. This is like an 8, and I'm just going to work a little coloring in here, tint in a little area here, and tint in some of the area right in here as I'm going to, and start to give a little bit of shape to some of this area here. We will come in and tint that again. You know, Indian yellow is our main tint color, but this is more tone, so it's a raw sienna. Now, raw sienna tints very, very well because it's a semi-transparent color. This is a beautiful raw sienna we have. It's more close to the, you know, I've made raw sienna, all different kinds of raw sienna versions over the years, and when I did it with Traditions and then Josanias and stuff. And this one is a beautiful raw sienna coming out of Australia that is real close to the old world color. And so it's not as opaque as some of the other raw sienna earth colors that I've made over the years. And since we're using the powdered ground pigments, just exactly like they did over, you know, that they do in oil paints and the fine artist quality colors, and the old, you know, Dutch used, you can get a beautiful look to it. So look at that beautiful glaze that raw sienna and a little bit of that Indian yellow gives it, just to pump it up just a bit, but it gives it a beautiful glaze here. Now, this area here onto his painting has fugitated out. There's just no way that yellow would go in there. So he had probably come in there with a real cool kind of green that is gone over time, and you know, layering on there. So we'll tint it like, you know, that, like there at first. Now, what he would do with a lot of this is he'd put on the yellow, then tint down with the blue, a very light blue, and then on some leaves he would go absolutely into the reverse. The one reason why that you would put down the yellow and then tint onto the blue, like I said in the last time, is that the control of the yellow is easier that way. The blue is very, very powerful, and once you put that blue down, it's hard to tint that over. So this being a lighter color, then you start to tint it with the blues, which are generally a little bit darker. So once we get this nice warmth that's in here like this onto the leaf, what we'll do is we'll start to tint down. Now I'm going to start here. Let's just use a little blue and black, a little phthalo blue and a little black here. So I'm just going to take that right up over here and push that so you can still see that. A little phthalo blue and a black right here, and a little bit extender, and I'm going to thin this way out here. And he would do it in a dry layer. He didn't mix them too much. He would do it in another dry layer of the blues and stuff coming in. But watch what will happen here this time is you'll get these lovely softer greens now starting to come here. These real gray soft greens, and that's what he uses, is these gray soft greens. Now I'm going to put a little bit more of a shadow line right in here because there'll be a turned part of the leaf right here. Okay, so which will develop even more, but we'll just let that come up there like that shadow, and we'll just lightly pull this down. I'll leave a little bit of streaking, just a little, because as I'm going to put a light in that in just a second, and that will cause it to disappear. Let's take a little bit of this shadow here, a little bit of that blue here, and that black, more along the line of that Prussian. You can have a little bit of ultramarine in there and stuff too. That wouldn't hurt, but we'll put a nice, this will be a nice cool. Now, in in this area his has really fugitated out, but I'm gonna continue to tint this through, and we can go back and add a little bit more yellow if we want later on, but I'm just going to continue to tint that. Once you have the base down with some of the yellow here, you can go back and forth with these blues pretty easy. But if you put blue down first and then try tinting with the yellow, it takes all day to get it there. It takes quite a bit. Let's put a little bit of that blue right in there like that. It'll swoop this way, just a little bit more this way. Right up in there like that. Now, so let's take just a bit of the white into this. Okay, just a bit of the white into this here. Now you'll see that color that he really uses on that, just a bit of the white here. And we'll come down through here like this. And very thin, I'm very thin, because you want to pick up a little bit of that yellow in there to get that greenish look into that. Okay, so keep it very thin. But we can model this just a bit. Remember, you can leave it a little mottled, because as we do this again, as we tint again, which we'll be tinting yellow and blue and stuff, as we tint again, that will that modeling will start to soften out. So we'll have a little bit here on the edge. There's going to be a little turned edge of that leaf there. Here, especially right in here. Just a little edge. And, you know, edging details and stuff is something I don't usually work too much on right now, but since that one's pretty easy to state, we'll just go ahead and do that real quick. There we go. Right through like that. We'll put just a whisper of that in here, which is gone on his original, but we'll have a little whisper of that. Beautiful big tulip leaf right in there. I want to leave a little more yellowing in there too, so I'll just add a little bit of that yellow. So you can see that yellow still has power there because I have it there already. And all I'm doing is bringing it back up. We'll tone down, gray down just a bit more up here as we come up and deposit that right in here. Some of that right in there. We'll put a little bit of that yellowing right in there with that. Soften that shadowing. These fusions just work beautiful for that. So you see that nice turning there. There'll be a little bit of this blue, which we'll pick up right in here like this before it turns right around like that. Right around like that. And this gets this razor edge. Now this razor edge thin area there is one that we don't have to get specific yet with, but you know it's there, so you can, let's just put a little bit more white with that, just that razor thin edge right there. And then you come in with some of your grade, blue grays, and paint up to that edge to thin it out. There. Turn that, thin that out, like that. So that'll turn that leaf a bit. Bit more dark right in here. Coming back this way, just a touch. Bit more right in here, but again we're stepping towards it, so we're going to be doing this again, and I'm going to leave that just a bit mottled there so we don't get too smooth. We'll leave that just a bit mottled. There will be a little bit of the vein line showing up in there, so we'll let that sit in just a bit there. So we're going to have some final lights and stuff, you know, here, but don't get wrapped up in trying to paint all of that right now. We're just going to put a little bit so we can see that, but that's got to that'll be all done again. We'll leave that just kind of modeled like that because it's easy for us to soften out here. Oh, lost a bit of that edge shadow there. There we go. So that gives you, you can see once you get some of that grisaille in there like that, tinting these colors goes pretty quickly, and that's you know, that's one of the reasons why they did it. And notice how thin and how little color that I'm using. That's why they did the grisaille, because their colors were hard to come by and expensive, and you know, so they can paint the grisaille and then come back over and do these kinds of tinting things, and they work great. Now what's going to happen is that looks great now. That's going to dry down, get a little dark, and will sink away, and we do it again. Okay, because these colors are going to dry down at least 10% or so in value. Remember, we've said that all along. They're going to dry down a bit, so that we know is going to happen. So we're not going to worry about that too much. But we're going to tint right in through here. First, let's go right back to that raw sienna, which you know is a beautiful realgar kind of color, very fugitive color, but right into some of that raw sienna kind of coloring. Just right here, maybe even a little bit of that black into that. Beautiful kind of real toned kind of color. Let's just come right in here and model that right into this leaf here. That's good. Here. And then we will come in and take some of our blue here, right into some of that, and just lightly our blue-black right into that. And that's a little bit blue, so a little more black. Blue-black. Just a little bit. Got a little bit too much there. Just model that in. And we're going to have all kinds of little edges and stuff like that onto this, but this will, you can see, this makes a real soft kind of a greenish modeling, dark greenish kind of leaf in here, which is what I want. And we'll come in and be a little more specific with edges and stuff later on, but we can put some of them on using the corner of this little flat, and just, but see, get that modeling of that color, that nice movement and modeling. A little of that raw sienna. Oh, that's a little bit too much there. A little bit of that raw sienna and the coloring in there. And come in with a bit of that blue. Set that right behind. So you tint the leaves with the yellow. Now what they would do is they tint the leaves with the yellow, and then they'll let that tack up a little bit. Those yellows get kind of sticky and stuff, and then glaze the blues in on top of that. And so the colors don't actually mix. We can go ahead and mix them here, but they kept those colors so that they didn't have to mix, and that actually lets you use less of them. You know, you use less color because that color dries, it keeps its power. Then your next glaze goes on very thin on top of that. I'm shortcutting that just because we can, because our paints aren't, you know, we can readily get them, and they're not as expensive, and so as they were, you know, back in the day of the Dutch. So we can shortcut that, and we can let some of those pigments mix a bit, because they're good quality pigments. They can mix and still maintain their identity, where they had some problems sometimes with some of their coloring and the weakness of some of their coloring. We don't have that today. You know, so so that gives this nice lighter little look out over here. There's another you know, larger green one that's going to be right up into this area of that. I'm going to leave that alone yet, because I'm going to let this guy be, this big tulip leaf, kind of be our division up over here, and I want to get over here towards this back turned poppy, which is right in here, and get to work on just some of it, not all of it, but some of its coloring and its you know, its shape and stuff, just a little bit on it, starting adding some of that. It's going to have a little stem that's going to come down right into this area there. So I just took a little bit of my blue black there, just kind of set that in. we'll come in and we've glazed that with some of our yellows from before. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to take some of my raw sienna type color here, and I'm going to I'm going to want this kind of orange, but I want to do this kind of softly here first. So I'm going to glaze a little bit. I even have a little of that dirty blue in my brush here. But I'm just going to glaze this with some of the yellow raw sienna here first, which is going to help push back and keep control of my orange to keep it from going too bright. So, because we don't want to have it too bright. And we'll do some howding and stuff like that with some of our grays on it anyway here, which is, you know, earlier on in the painting I told you we'll do howding on this painting, which is one of their techniques where, you know, we have the orange here, we got to go to gray, which will take some of that gray right up over the edge of this orange that we're going to develop in here. Right now, I want to develop the light, the dark of the orange. Now here's our darker grisaille right in here. Here's our lighter area here. So we'll head to a little bit of our yellow oxide right into some of our naphthol red light here. And I'm going to use this very thin. This is very, very thin as we go to tint this orange, because I don't want this to be too bright. It is a bright flower, but I don't want it to be too bright, too heavy bright here. So I'll tint that right in there. And so to keep it from getting bright, you can either tone it down. You can tone it down slightly, or the other way is to use it really, really thin. So I'll just use it really, really thin here as I get into that. I need just a bit more red, just because of that raw sienna sitting on there. There we go. That's nice. So I'm just going to tint this, and I'll just use short, choppy little motions here too, so that that gives some motion or movement to the poppy as well. There'll be a lot of little paintings, but right now I just want to set up, you know, there'll be lots of little, you know, fine little petaling and stuff that'll come out through here, which is going to come out of the center of the poppy. But, you know, we'll do that, but, you know, not yet. I can set up a little bit of movement here. We'll just take a little bit of the reds and the blacks, a little soft movement here, a little streaky movement into the poppy here like this. Just some movement, you know, that you see. We'll petal it and do all of that stuff after we get some more stuff going on up front. But we can put a little movement like this, just coming through here to streak some of this in. So we have that lighter. I don't want to lose that lightness that's right here, though. Not so much that I lose that lightness yet. There, like that. Then we'll tone this down. Let's get into some of our raw sienna. Let's get down into here to even a little bit and cool it just a bit with a little bit of that red violet, a little bit of brown matter. So your oranges are any kind of red and yellow, right? We can push it down cooler and make an orange really from the yellow and the red violet. That'll make a real cool color. If that gets a little too toned for you, then you can pump it up with a little bit of the naphthol red light. The other way is to take some of that nice black and put some of that in there as well. But we have, and that's how I would do it, like if I'm doing Paint Simply, we have our grisaille right in here too, which is going to help us tone this down. So I don't want to tint over quite as much with the bright yellow or orange that I used back there. So I want to tone it down just a bit here. That's a bit too much right there. So I'll make my toned orange here with my raw sienna, maybe just a touch of black and some of the red, and I get this beautiful toned type of orange right here, which hits right about the color that he's using, which is beautiful. Beautiful coloring in there. See, it's a little bit more toned here, and it goes right over that grisaille, really nice. And what it's going to do is make a light side and a cool side to that, light side, bright side, cool side right down here to the shadow side here as the light's coming through light's coming through, and then it's diminishing over here. And we'll just give it a little bit of movement edges here. So just state ever so lightly here right now. We'll come in and paint all this. Don't worry about that. But I don't want to paint it too much. It's a back object. I don't want to paint it too much. I just want to give it some movement to it and some light and dark to it. And when this dries, we can then do a little howding into the back with some of our grays. And after we do all of that, then we can look at doing some of the pedaling on this. You know, we can look at some of that. Might want to have it just a bit lighter, just a bit more orange here, just a bit lighter, even a tiny bit of white to help cloud that, just a touch here. Right here, right up here, we might want to have there's a bit of, right by the handle here, there's a bit more, just more powerful orange. So we might want to make that right in that area. Just a bit of white into some of that brighter orange up here at the top. And we'll express that right there. Right up through like that. A bit right there. So that'll make let me just put a little bit more into that. That gives you a good, nice grisaille, or first tinting a color over your grisaille here. The orange, the light here gives a little bit of body to this poppy, this turned back poppy here. And of course we'll do more a little later. We'll just vary that just a bit in there. Some nice movement of color, so we have a nice, you know, cooler, shadowy side, light coming through, hitting back through here, hitting the back side of this right through here. It's even going to hit these leaves that are turned way back here like this, down here like that. It's going to hit some of them, you know, which is good. And I got a real big one here, and there's a big snowball here, viburnum type snowball here. So we can put a little bit more. Now that I have that, I can wash a little bit more of a yellow, maybe a toned yellow here. Let's just shove this over just a bit here. See a little more on my palette. Maybe a nice little toned raw sienna and yellow oxide type of color here. And let's put just a bit of extender over that. We'll work through that right there. And let's just very lightly tint that, warm that just a bit there. That's nice. I have there's this leaf that's right back through there as well. So let's take we want to keep it kind of grayed down. So I'm going to tint it first with a little bit of my raw sienna here, right there like that. Then we'll shove it over with just a little bit of our blue black, maybe a tiny bit of white into that blue black here. Very much the black, so it stays very kind of gray. We'll thin that out, little extender. We want to just lightly do that right into that yellow. And again, he would do it 2 layers, but we'll do it 1 here. And that just makes that color. That's nice. Of course, we'll just, you know, you can put it on ever so lightly. I still see my grisaille vein lines. Remember I did a few little vein lines on that. And I still see that on there, which I can come back and redefine those with a little gray here in a minute if I want. But I want to keep it light as well, so we'll come back with just a bit more light in just a second. Varying that color here. And it'll come, it'll pick a little bit of it up here before it gets back into some of that light area back up over here, like that's a snowball back behind there. Now I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the black, a little bit of the gray. We had some very soft indications of the vein lines here. That one. I'll just just, give an indication of them. And of course, we'll be more specific later. This is just the idea of it, and we'll be doing that. Then we'll be coming in as we paint them, where we'll pick up a little bit of our light, like a light blue, like this, and come in and hit the highlights, in between the veins here. So I'll just hit it just a bit here, just to see a little bit of that definition there, but not going to spend too much time on that right now. I'm a real big, I can get, I'm a detail person, and I can get bogged down into the details and lose my painting perspective very, very easy. And I did that on so many of my earlier ones. I got too much into the details and stuff and painting things out of perspective. And so it's something I'm constantly reminding myself, don't get bogged down in it. Keep moving with that. That's what they're doing. They're moving, they're when it comes to the time of the details, that's when we'll slow down and we'll spend a lot of time in there. Those details. Now's not the time. Now it's just, state the areas in here. You can, leave a few little vein lines there. You can move your brush into the shape of those little leaf and leaf veins. But just don't get bogged down there too long into stuff. There, like that. That's pretty nice. So that's just a nice, soft little guy right back down there. And you can see when you're tinting, especially in those back areas, like I said, we'll spend most of our time up here into these grapes and all that kind of stuff. And then when we get some of those back areas, boy, they'll go pretty quickly because there's not as much detailing in them, but they will go pretty quickly. Let's go up here and let's tint this one. It's nice, and this one right here it's just a classic one where it goes real warm right down into the blues back into here. Matter of fact, we might even want to use a little bit of our yellow oxide right back up there in the top before we go to a little bit of our raw sienna and right down. And I definitely got that leaf right down in that area there, that kind of stuff too big right down into that area. I'll push that back with some gray. But that's just a little big. There's another big snowball right back there as well. I can so I don't lose that while that's still wet there. I'm just going to take a little white right back into this and just tap right into this area of this snowball. This is where I'll be making petals here. So I'll just tap. This is where the lightness of some of those petals are going to come right in here. And I'll just suggest that right now. And then but look at that beautiful, it goes through the yellows and then back down into the grays and stuff there again. So that'll help suggest and keep that roundness there to that snowball. Let's go back, going back and forth a little bit. We'll go back up over here towards our leaf. We'll head into our blues and some of that black right back down here. And especially down in that blue-black as we get down to the lower side. A little bit more onto the yellower side up there at the top. Down in the blue-black down here towards the bottom. There'll be a series of, it's just a big leaf here with some smaller little ones coming out here. There we go. And so I'm misshaping that just a bit, made that big leaf back in there. I'm going to correct that in just a minute. And then I'll take a little bit lighter color with that. As we come up here to this side, a little bit of light into that. We'll just put light, let that come up even a little bit more of the yellow side right up here. And I'm not going to worry too much about vein lines or so. You could take a little bit of gray kind of color there, the blue-gray here, and show a little bit of the vein lines if you want. Or just the movement there onto this one here. We'll darken. There'll be this lighter little one right back behind here will be lighter. Then it'll get darker again. Right here, right up in front of this one, that's going to sit right in front of it. So a little through light hitting this little one back behind there, and a little darker. And it'll eventually have a little light vein line and so, but I'm not going to get lost in that. I'm going to tell myself I'm not going to get lost in that. I'm just going to keep going here. Put a little bit of that blue out there like that. And I'm going to correct up this area here. I'll just make a more toned orange because it's all going to have gray over it here. So it's going to take a little bit of raw sienna and a little bit of the naphtha red light and a little bit of black here. I'm just going to correct up this area here just a bit. Just get rid of this one. And just walk the color out a little bit. If you have to do corrections like that, just walk the color. Take our raw sienna, a little bit of that orangey kind of color. Just walk it out, thin it out here like this, and you'll hide what that you've had to correct it there. So there, like that. Let that come right around like that, down in there. And that works. We'll reshape that. And that's what I say is, see, you can see how well that works. That just reshapes, painted out that other thing that I had there. That was the wrong area, wrong thing. And that's why I say when you work in small layers like this and doing this, and since you have no texture, it's easy to go in and correct and shape, and they did that a lot. Okay, they did that a lot. So we had that there, and there's a little bit of a leaf and stuff that's right back in here. And we'll take a little raw sienna first. Let's just give a little bit of the raw sienna to that. Then we'll take a little bit of our blue. And that, and just an idea of that right in there. Of course, we'll let it go a little darker, a little bit more blue-black right up here. As it comes forward by this grape is where you want to have that nice dark right there. Right there like that. That you can hardly see, but it's there. So just a little bit right in there. A nice shadow, and that really helps bring this, that shadowing back there on this. We'll get a little bit more of the blue-black right in there. Be real careful right in there, and you can see that'll really bring that grape forward. Here, we'll let that other blue grape sit there. Bit there. That really helps bring those forward, and then it'll go right. There'll be another actual smaller, little lighter leaf right down here. A little bit of yellow into that, and then it'll go, and I'll get that into detail. Now I'm just going to put a little color in there so I remember that I see that in there. There. A little yellow, so it's remind me, boy, he's got a lot of different levels of the color of the objects here. And then we'll get into just a tiny little bit of the snowball there. A little bit of that little guy there, or snowball or Guelder type rose. We call it Guelder rose. Kind of, we'll take just a tiny bit of white right into that area so we don't lose that too much. We know that that's going to be right about where our light areas are going to be back in there. And I'll just give a little bit of movement to that, so it's not going to be, you know, huge. It's just a little bit of movement there to that. So you can see as we're working up and around in here like that, some of that is really starting, you know, to come together for that. I'm going to head up here now that, and we'll maybe put a little tint on those other primroses down to there, but we got to get some of this other tints on some of these other leaves up here as well. So maybe we'll do that first and then head up there if we have time. With today's lesson, we'll do we'll do some of those others here. Let me just move this up out of the side here, and this right up there like that. There we go. And so we want to work up there. Let's get up some of these little guys in here. We'll tint up some of those. There's a little marigold type of flower sitting right back through here. We have to tint that in. There's a couple of other poppy areas or flowers or big orange flowers back in through there. We might want to tint some of those in as well. And but we want to tint in some of these primroses. And some of these primroses up here are a little bit lighter and a little bit grayer. Not too much to those. I'm going to go back to my smaller brush. Not too much to those up here, leaving them mostly gray. And I've always wondered when I saw those, as opposed to what he did with the other ones, did he use those washes too thin, keeping those lights, and they fugitated out, So, but we're going to take a little bit kind of a reddish gray here. Let's put this right up there to see that. So a little bit of our black and reds right down through here. And we'll just come right, let's put a little bit of extender on that. So you had both, I've done the dry with you in the areas, and then we've done a little bit of both, and you can decide which, you like to do, which is your favorite way, which do you like, in your painting. And I'm going to come right into here and we'll tint down a little bit of this reddish gray or darker toned red here. And we'll let that gray sit in there as well on those. And we'll put some of that red and black and a little bit of that orange. We'll put some of that back in here. We'll let that one there. It's kind of nice if you're doing the put a little more red and black up in there. If you're doing the primrose, to get them, try to remember to get all of them as much as you can. We'll set those back in there. Very thin, so they're going to be very grayish color. A little bit of that, and a tiny bit of yellow into the center there. A little bit of that yellow oxide, just very toned. Tiny bit of the yellow. We'll pick up a little bit of white. Tap that into some of the grays here just to take it, soften it down just a bit. And tap a little bit of that light right in there. Not pure white. Gray it down. About a value 8 or so here. Gray it down. Tap some of that in. Here. Into some of those lighter ones that are there. They're going to have like little light edges and stuff like that, petal edges and stuff. Sometimes I will, if I have it, I will just simulate it just a little bit so I know that where that is. Just take a little corner of your brush and just kind of, you don't want to do anything quick and detailed or anything like that, but you just kind of say, okay, this is going to have this kind of movement, and you can always come back and change and soften some of that movement later, but that'll just help you leave those that amount of grayness on those colors as well. That amount of gray that we have there, that'll help you leave some of that there. This doesn't have very much onto that one. There, like that. Just a bit of that. Just keep those very, very soft for right now. We'll do more onto those. Nice bright orange. Let's take some of our red. I'm going to push over to the side here. Just give me a little bit more. And nice bright orange. We might even make this with a lot of Hansa at this time. A lot of Hansa, a little bit of that red. Nice bright orange here. Some extender into this. Yeah, that's that orange. Whoa. And we'll put that nice bright orange. It's not, it's got a beautiful coloring to his painting here of all these colors and interplaying back and forth like this, and just really nice. I'm going to put that in. We will tone that down just a little bit. Just going to grab a little bit of this toned red right here, drop it right into here, create a little bit of a toned color, and we'll just kind of streak that through just a bit. We're not going to paint the petals on this guy yet, but we'll just give a little bit of streaking through here, like that. There we go. And then the center of that is a little bit more toned down orange. So let's get our orange here, a nice bit. Let's get a little bit of black, tiny bit of black red into that. Tone that down. We'll drop the center in there, and it needs to be a little bit darker than that. So a little more black, a little more red. Into that, we want a nice dark one. Nice dark center, like that. Right in there. There we go. And then now I got that orange kind of colliding there with that center a bit, so I'm just going to streak this up just a bit more. So you see, definitely see that center, and you see these petals just coming out like that, so you get an idea of the movement of it. I don't want to, paint the petals as much, we're not there, but I do like to, even when I'm tinting color like this, I like to give the movement to it. So you're going to see some movement of the petals, going in and out like that. So that's always a good thing. Here. There we go. Not paint it up too much more than that, but that gives a nice movement to that. Let's take a, might as well, while we're here, take a little bit of our yellow oxide, nice lighter bit, and let's just go right over that area there to tint the stem on that tulip, and then a little bit of our blues that are right down here. And again, he would let them dry, but we don't need to. And we'll go right over that, kind of green that up a bit, a little bit of white into that to get that light color right in there. That light is going to have that shadow that picks up right a little bit above this right here. There'll be a shadow, then we'll go to here, and then there'll be another shadow that'll pick up right there. So we might as well just leave those right there like that, just to, that's enough to say that's where that one is. It'll get a little bit lighter. Well, we might do that, just a little bit lighter. That's enough for that, just so it sits back in front of those primroses, but it's going to go really quite light here. Okay, Dave, play with it just a bit. And I know some of you are saying, hey, you're not supposed to do that, but you know what? There we go. That's about enough. It's just kind of neat to, it's kind of fun when these things get into this part of the painting. I love it. I mean, I'm giving it color now. I'm going through, and when you get so much of the color on here like this, the painting just starts to look so pretty, and it's coming together, it's working, and you want to keep going, and it's going to make it so much easier when we go to do all the detail work, because you have so much pretty stuff to look at. If you started to work, if we worked grisaille in one little area and did grapes and then went right into all this detail and stuff, it wouldn't be as much fun because you don't have as much pretty. You got all this, this stuff going on. So, well, for example, when you look in here, let's step back. You look at all of this pretty, and now when we look at this, now you got all of this pretty here, and then why they call that the dead layer there. This is a really beautiful example between the beauty of the color layer to the grisaille layer here and everything that's going on. And so if you had to just work this area and look at all this gray and work it into here, that's a little bit more difficult to do than if you see all of this pretty color working all around. Then you know you're building your design, you know. So it's a much better way, okay, to get some of that stuff going. Let's go. Whoops, it's gonna come right back here. Big board. This is a big board. I want to come down right down into this area here. We'll work down into some of these some of this area in here. Now I'm going to be tinting, like when I come over here to the carnation and stuff. There's just going to be areas that I'm going to be working on that are reds and areas that are white and stuff. So I'm just going to do, and it's a white flower. So it's kind of like when we were working on the very top ones here when we started tinting color. I'm just going to do very little to the white areas right now. I'm just going to come in and tint some of the reds, and then we're going to step out and you know, keep moving here. We'll tint those and we'll get these leaves in. So I don't want to do too much work on that carnation. I want to go into that carnation onto details, okay? So we'll just step back here for just a second here, and we'll put this on. Let's just come right down in here in this area here. Let's put a little bit of our extender on right down in here. That'll waken up that area here. Okay, and we'll kind of do this real fast here. Just a little bit of color right into here. Then we hit our goal today. So we have we're going to come right down into the carnation itself here. I'm just going to pick out a few. I'm just going to use some naphthol red light, maybe a little bit of the brown madder into this here. Just a nice little warm red. We'll pick out some red areas here. You don't have to pick them all out. I'm using my small little flat here, my little number 2 flat. And I'm going to hit the red area that I see there on that particular flower. So I'll hit that. You know, some of these we'll want to go over a little bit more, you know, orangey and stuff like that later. But there's going to be another one that's going to come in. We'll just pick out the main ones, okay? So you have some main, you have a main petal here that's just going to have a little red that comes in here. Some of this we can adjust, you know, later. Maybe a little red streak and a little red streak right out through here like that. That's all you need to have in that. There's a folding over petal here that's going to have a little red right in there like that, okay? Some of this big area here. Now we can change some of this. Some of this in here will have a red area like right in here. We can change some of that. Let that just, you're tinting red. So, you know, we can take that out, especially white. White is so opaque. We can take it out pretty easy. Not to worry about it, okay? But you will just look for like little areas of red. Like there'll be a little area of red here. And maybe a little line of red that's going to come through here. You know, maybe you have a little, just a light glazing of red in there. A little bit of light glazing of red in there. So just little areas here, there'll be a streak of the reds there. Some candy caned it up. There's some streaks of that in there. Okay. They're beautiful. You know, I love to paint these types of carnations and stuff, and they actually have tulips that are like this too, you know, that they introduced that virus to that makes them grow like this. And I love them. I find them somewhat distracting to the painting itself because there's so much, you know, so much streaking, you know, pressure onto it. But we'll just add a little bit like that. Now those can change a little bit, but that's just going to give us the idea of that. And then we'll come on down here to the leaves that are down here. I'm going to switch back over to a little bit bigger brush because I'm not going to spend a lot of detail here onto these leaves. I'm going to take some yellow oxide. Take some yellow oxide. We'll just lightly wash over that yellow oxide onto these leaves here. Yellow oxide. You could use a little bit of your Indian yellow into that. You could use a little Hansa yellow into that. This is your brighter forward ones here. So you could do a few little bits in here, but I want to get this color right down in here. I want to start looking at some of the color, even if it's off just a bit, it's okay. But I want the yellow oxide, nice brighter one here. And we'll take some of our blue here and a little bit of our black, phthalo blue, a little bit of black here. And might even have a little bit of white with that here. Just a real soft. And we'll just push that right into that. Right there, just a little tinting of that. A little bit into the shadowing in here. Let a little of the yellow show here and there. And again, we're just tinting some color here. Get, there we go. Just put some of that very light, very little. If your leaf is coming too blue, you're using too much blue. Just a tiny little thin layer of it. Okay, it should come in more towards the greenish kind of side there. And then you can lighten this up a bit. And if we keep it, you know, if we keep the values here pretty close to where we want to go. So this is going to come in a little bit lighter here. And yes, it's going to be a little blue. I can tint that again with some greens and stuff here a little later. And there's little vein lines and stuff like that, but that's a little too much for me right now. I can grab a little bit of yellow and push some of that yellow into that. I just don't like to, because he doesn't, even though our colors are so much better quality than what they used back then, because, you know, we can make better paints today. So we can mix like this, and they didn't have to. I mean, they couldn't really and get the clarity that they wanted to have. We can, but we just don't want to do mixing of the greens. I don't want to mix greens together because that's something they didn't do. So, but we can work them in a wet form like this and capture that same type of look and feeling of it. So we'll capture a little bit of that here. Just very thin color. There'll be a little light that'll come in here. This will just get us started in some of that. So you can see that right in there. There's a little bit of the vase sitting over there. And so I've got that all covered up back up there. So I'll just do it over here real quick. I had some of this. Let's get some more raw sienna down here. Let's get some of our quinacridone, a little bit of that black down there. Quinacridone and black here. And some more raw sienna, nice toned bit down here. Toned kind of orangey color, and we'll just go ahead and just put a little bit of that into the foot of the vase there. Remember, I added the little, the depth of the vase that he didn't have on his. And we'll add the pedestal here. Here's a little bit of the vase right here. We have a couple of little pooty feet there. We'll just go right over those. And that'll just set nicely with those right now. We don't have to do too much. This actually gets so dark down here. We don't have to do too much into those right now. I'll put just a little more dark, a little more black with that right in there, so it brings that rose forward. We'll keep those feet there. A little bit darker into the back here. But most of that, the grisaille just tints over there, and the grisaille takes over, and that works pretty well. There is one thing. Let's just go ahead and cast that in right now before we call it a day. We'll take a little yellow oxide, even a little raw sienna is not too bad in that too, and a little bit of that red. We'll make a real softer orange, and we'll come right back here. We won't add any of the real details, so we just model this around a little bit, just kind of, so we'll get a little movement there. There'll be that orange for that orange flower coming through there. Right in there, we can take a little bit of shadow in there. What the heck? Give a little movement there. An orange flower we're going to put right in there. And that'll get us there. Isn't that kind of fun? Isn't it kind of neat to see some of those colors and stuff come on there? All right. So don't get bogged down into the details. Keep tinting and keep moving through that. And because we want to be able to come back in and work our grapes again, work our peaches, and work all those areas again. And get those up before we get into some of those other details. But it looks neat when you get some of that color in there. I'm excited about it. And we'll come up and we'll start addressing some of the flowers up towards the other side there with the next lesson. And it's coming pretty quick, so get your homework done. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.